afternoon. Welcome. I invite everyone who's here at the SyracuseCoE to take their seats. Stop all their chatting. My name is Ed Bogish. I'm the Executive Director of SyracuseCoE. We're New York State's Center of Excellence in Environmental and Energy Systems. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone who's here in the room and also listening in via the webinar to our March Research and Technology Forum. Our Research and Technology Forums are a monthly series that are offered by our partner program. If your firm or institution isn't already a SyracuseCoE partner, we invite you to check out that program. And in particular, I'm going to bring to everyone's attention, if you are a partner or if you're not yet a partner, we offer to industry partners the opportunity to receive funding from us. We have a program called the Innovation Fund, which offers awards of up to $10,000 for projects to assist with commercialization of new products. We also offer opportunities to get support for summer internships. Both of those programs are currently open and the applications are due next Thursday. So just reminding our partners that we look forward to receiving applications for our projects that would be funded through our Innovation Fund or requests for support for internships. Through our Research and Technology Forums, our aspiration is to offer topics that address innovations in environmental and energy systems, and also we hope that these presentations will attract a diverse group of participants, both physically here in the room and also on the web. And I'll just say that today's presentation has achieved our expectations, and that folks who have registered to attend represent a broad variety of backgrounds and interests, and also the folks who are on the web. For folks who are listening in via the webinar, I'd encourage you, if you have questions at any stage, please use the chat box and on your interface, and we'll be happy to bring those questions. There's this person who's monitoring the chat box, and we'll bring those questions to the speakers. In terms of folks who are here in the room, I want to specifically call out, we have two folks from Cryomech. Cryomech is a Syracuse area company that is a world leader in cryo refrigeration. This was a company that was founded by a Syracuse University faculty member, William Gifford, who developed the Gifford-McMahon cycle of cryogenic refrigeration. It's a company of about 120 employees, making cryogenic refrigeration for a variety of applications, including helium management systems, which operate at 4 Kelvin. And I'm very happy that they're in the room to talk about applications of hydrogen and hydrogen management systems. So it's just exciting to have Cryomech in the room and to have everybody else in the room. Without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor over now to our presenters. We have two presenters today. Paul Mutolo, you saw in the announcement, he actually has two hats. He has kind of a day job at Cornell, where he's Director of External Partnerships for the Energy Materials Center at Cornell University. And then he's an entrepreneur, and he's the CEO of a startup firm called Standard Hydrogen Corporation. Standard Hydrogen Corporation's mission is enabling widespread deployment of carbon-free power and vehicles. They envision doing this through hydrogen energy services for customers in the grid and transportation sectors, powered by their high-gel on-site hydrogen energy storage system, and Paul will be speaking about that. And then Paul will be followed by Barry Carr. Barry is coordinator of Clean Communities of Central New York. This is an outreach program operated by the U.S. Department of Energy since 1993. Barry's in charge of educating transportation professionals on the use of alternative fuels and alternative fueled vehicles. So the format of our forum this afternoon is Paul is going to open at our request with an encore performance of a TED Talk that he gave in Corning some months ago, which we've enjoyed watching on the web, and we thought we'd like to see it in person, and we thought we'd like to share it with you. And then I think Paul will be followed by Barry, who's going to give an update on the frontiers of alternative transportation. And then Paul will come back and tell us about standard hydrogen. So that's our approach for this forum. And we look forward to the presentations and to the conversation that we'll have afterwards. So without further ado, Paul Mutola.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much, Ed, for the introduction. It's wonderful to be here. As Ed mentioned, this is a bit of a reprise of a TED Talk I was lucky enough to give a few years ago in Corning. I'm so happy to be here to share it with you as well. I've entitled it Honorable Transportation, and we'll loop back to the meaning of that title when we get to it. So I find it ironic that many of us, maybe all of us, have been delivered here to this place together by car, either driving or riding. And none of us took the trash in our car along the way and threw out the window. I'm sure none of us opened the doors and emptied our pockets of all the trash, that we collected along the way. We didn't pollute from our littering. There are receptacles for that everywhere. And yet our cars, for the most part, are really polluting vehicles. We're at a change point today where we're seeing more and more zero-emission vehicles work their way onto the roads. Electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids are getting us part of the way there. Hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are available in Europe and California today. I wanted to take a small walk with you through some experience we've had in this country with moving a transportation system over from an incumbent system to an electrified system, and see how that's done for us in terms of solving problems that we want to solve. And we solve them all by simply moving to electricity. And what other problems does that create for us? So to do this, I invite you to walk with me through two tunnels. And the first one starts here. This is Grand Central Station in New York City. I grew up visiting this, not daily, but often, as my dad commuted down from Westchester County, where I grew up, down into Manhattan, where his architecture firm was located. Metro North trains took him through the tunnels in and out of Grand Central. Decades before, Grand Central recently celebrated its 100th anniversary, by the way. And decades before, in the early days of Grand Central Station, the trains that ran in and out of the station were not electrified. They were more like these trains, the original underground trains from the UK, coal-fired locomotives running in tunnels underground. That seems completely foreign to us today. How could anyone live for a minute, much less for years, running a coal-fired steam engine underground in enclosed tunnels? But of course it happened, and of course the accidents that ensued, several of them fatal, led to changes which radically changed the abilities for these trains to run underground, especially in New York. In around the 1910s or 20s, they quickly implemented some state laws that required vehicles to be traveling on the rails underground to be powered not by coal on board, but by some other means. They invented the third rail. Electrified transportation was ushered in, and the problem was gone, at least from the tunnels. But where did the problem go? Where does that electricity come from that powers the rails? Today in our country, we're a little bit less than 50% coal-powered on the electricity that we use every day, whether it's running the chargers that charge our iPhones, our laptops, our computers. They're mostly being run by coal or natural gas or even nuclear, which is still steam engine technology. This is 1800s technology that's running our electric grid today. So I contend that we didn't quite solve the problem by moving the problem upstream. And we have to look at a systems approach to see how we can do better, especially as we think about doing this today for our cars. And this is the reason why I believe that's important. This is an image of the Earth taken by Apollo, I believe it was Apollo 13, that as it was on its way out to the moon, between the missions that delivered astronauts to the moon, this mission went out and circled around and looked back and took the picture that we know today as the blue marble, the Earth from space. It was the first image that we got that let us see our whole planet as what it is. A vehicle that we're all traveling on is bringing us through space. I've grown up with this image. It was taken when I was just a few months old. And so my whole existence, so to say, has been with the knowledge that we're all collected here under what I call our second tunnel. Now, this doesn't look like a tunnel from anyone's everyday perspective, but when you look closer and you see the thin envelope of our atmosphere above this land that we live, this exactly follows the definition of a tunnel. It has a clear beginning, the surface of our planet, a clear end, space, and it's enclosed. And what you put into it here in this space is trapped in this tunnel of space. Same way coal from the locomotives are trapped in the tunnels under Grand Central. The coal that we burn today in our power plants, the natural gas that we burn in our power plants, the heat we eject from these systems is trapped here in the second tunnel that we all share. I believe we need this global view on our energy systems in order to not just push the problem down the pipeline a little bit more again this time around. Here's the only data that I'll show in this presentation, and it hopefully captures a little bit of the magnitude of the problem from both the perspective of not just transportation, but also our full electric sector. As I mentioned, both these sectors are based on steam engine technology, 1800s technology. What that means is we take a fuel, whether it's gasoline or coal or natural gas, we're burning it in order to get some useful work. That means turning our wheels or turning a turbine that eventually makes electricity. We don't have to get our hands on the electrons. We're just making heat and using that heat to do some physical work for us. So what that means is, in the transportation side, only 1/5 of the actual energy that we extract out of that gallon of gas goes to turning our wheels. In the power sector, it's not much better. Only about 1/3 of the energy that we're using from our natural gas or coal is going into lighting up our lights or powering our phones. This is like having someone go to work for a day, but paying them for a week. Anyone who's been in a management position or looked over budgets knows how expensive people are. Imagine trying to pay your staff, but only having them show up 1/5 of the time, or 1/3 of the time. Unacceptable in most cases, and yet we do it every day on the electric grid and in our cars. So there has to be a better way, and I'm here to tell you that I've been lucky enough in my company to experience what that way is. In my opinion, in order to make a change of this magnitude, you have to make the change automatic to adopt, inexpensive to use, and simple to implement. And that, in my opinion, is the hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. This is one from Toyota. It's called the Toyota Mirai. Our company was invited to Lime Rock Park, which is a racetrack in Connecticut, where they test drove these vehicles and introduced them to the Northeast dealers. I don't own this car. This was given to me for the 5 or 10 minutes that I've had to drive around the track twice. One of the corrections I made from the first talk is I had people come up and ask me, "Oh, where's that car? How is it? Is it race?" I had to give it back at the end of the test drive. But it opened my eyes to what it would be like to drive a completely zero-emission vehicle that you can also power with a completely zero-emission fuel, which I'll get to in just a minute. And as you might already know, if you drive an electric car, it's quite unremarkable in that it feels like a regular car, except it's quiet. And it's somewhat remarkable in that it gives you a great boost of power right in the beginning as you zoom around Lime Rock Park or I-81, hopefully avoiding the troopers. So the global view now. We know about the cars. They're available in California. They're available in Europe where stations exist. How should we implement these stations? In my perspective, to make an honorable change, to move into a form of transportation that we want to not have the same impacts, negative impacts that our systems do today, we need to make stations that are invisible to this thin tunnel that we have. This is a hydrogen refueling station out in California, and you can see the mechanics of where that hydrogen is being built by that box up on top of the canopy. In that box is something called an electrolyzer, which works very similar to the way the tree works. It takes in energy, whether from wind or solar. It takes water, produces hydrogen and oxygen as well. Zero carbon in that cycle. Literally moving us from a carbon cycle to a water cycle, which we all know is a completely renewable resource on our planet, we do it right. That, I believe, is a change that I can believe in, that I feel is an honorable change, and it's something that I'll talk about a little later. My company's working on bringing here to the East Coast. And as I think you've gotten the impression, hopefully today, this is not just a change I'd like to make for myself, but really a global change that I want to be able to pass on to others. My wife and I believe in this technology. We believe this is the right technology for our kids to drive when they start driving. And I think it's because of my experience spending time here in the Adirondacks and teachings that my grandfather taught me about how he was taught to live and exist in the wilderness by a Native American guide who taught him. Some of those principles have filtered down to me, and I look around to find ways that I might be able to implement any small smidgen of those in our daily lives. Well, thanks very much. I hope that you can join me and walk toward an honorable future for our transportation system. Thanks.
Nice. I was impressed. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. See if I can get this working here. Let's see. Where am I going to find my presentation, Chetna? While she's finding that, I'm Barry Carr. I'm the coordinator of Clean Communities of Central New York. And what Ed didn't mention is that we're hosted here. So I'm here by the good graces of Syracuse University and the Center of Excellence. And I'm up on the 4th floor. I'm not here very much. I do this as a volunteer. I work full-time in the alternative fuel transportation industry, however, and have for the last 30 years. And I've had the pleasure of meeting Paul before. We met a couple of years ago, maybe down the pickup. And I've managed a fuel cell vehicle demonstration program, a cold weather test for American Honda a number of years ago. And we've managed with the Center of Excellence a cold weather and marketing test for Toyota for their plug-in Prius prototypes a number of years ago. And we're hoping to convince Toyota, because they're a really good, solid company that believes in doing the right thing, to kind of bring that technology here. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is available vehicles that run on things other than gasoline or diesel, a little bit of the history of the Clean Cities program, and where I think all this stuff is going. So bear with me here. This is the Clean Cities portfolio. We are in our 25th year. I am not a very good politician, but I can tell you that the politician who's in charge right now has proposed zeroing out our funding through the Department of Energy in the year of our 25th anniversary, which would be a very sad thing to see happen. But stay tuned. I have heard that maybe about 80% of it might be snuck back in on Friday with the next continuing resolution, so we'll hope for that. But what we do as a Clean Cities Coalition is try to promote the use of alternative fuels in transportation, try to promote fuel economy, so reducing the amount of fuel you use, whether it's a fossil fuel or not. Try to eliminate using fuels. There's a lot of new technologies out there that simply run your vehicle in a more intelligent method. I'm doing a long-term test right now on a prototype natural gas Ford F-150 that I've driven about 2,400 miles in the last 10 days maybe. It has auto stop on it, and it took a little bit to get used to it. You probably have it on your car, on your new car. It's unnerving when you pull up to a stop sign and all of a sudden you hear your vehicle turn off. But as soon as you take your foot off the brake, it restarts, and it's a proven fuel saver. The other thing is a lot of idle reduction technology can be done remotely. So if you're a fleet manager, and I deal more in the commercial fleet world than in the consumer world, you can remotely, through an app, check where all your vehicles are, check if they're running, check if they're idling. And I'm also the person who occasionally tells a county sheriff or a Baldwinsville police officer that it's illegal to idle your vehicles in New York State for more than 5 minutes, especially if you're in at Dunkin' Donuts having coffee. And they haven't arrested me yet, but they have strongly suggested how important their jobs are and their vehicle has to be running. I'm like, it's a brand new car. It started this morning. It's that hard to turn around. Okay, I won't win that one. But the acceptable federal alternative fuels are biodiesel, electricity, hydrogen, natural gas, propane, and ethanol. Why do we work with Clean Cities? We are a group that is designed to educate and teach people how to collaborate and work together. And believe me, we accomplish a lot more working together. On our last trips to the Hill, which we do annually, we try to let Congress know that for every dollar that we get in federal funding, we raise about $12.50 in private funding to match it. And I don't think there's another federal program that can do that. I mentioned collaboration. In New York State, we collaborate with the Department of Energy and with NYSERDA. So a lot of the projects we do are either co-funded by NYSERDA or co-funded by a contractor for NYSERDA. And I wanted to say hi to Chris out there because we're working on a Cleaner, Greener Communities project with him with the city of Syracuse right now. Information and education, we partner with NYSERDA and with the Syracuse University Center of Excellence. We have access to a lot of technical data because the Clean Cities program is run by the Department of Energy. We have access to the national lab. So people like Brookhaven and NREL and Argonne, we can utilize their experts to solve people's problems. And I'm going to show a couple slides here about some funding that's available. It is an exciting time right now in the alternative fuel vehicle world. And we are locally located here. So you see, there's about 100 of us. And I am not the original Clean Cities coordinator. With a really nice, hardworking guy named Joe Barry for a number of years. Actually started out of your office, Chris. Well, you were probably in high school. And it moved up to OCC for a while and then moved here. And Joe did pass away last year, but we still raise a glass of scotch to him once in a while. We're fortunate enough here in the Northeast to have a lot of clean cities. And the reason there's a lot of them here, they were all located in the areas of the country that had the worst quality air. So the dirtier your air, the better chance you had of the Department of Energy placing the Clean Cities Coalition. And the Clean Cities program actually started back in 1992 when the government put together the Energy Policy Act. And the Energy Policy Act said that federal and government fleets and utility fleets of over 200 vehicles had to start implementing vehicles that would run on something other than gasoline or diesel. And because most government fleets didn't know what alternative fuels were, the government created the Clean Cities program to go out and educate these people. So now we touch 82% of the total population of the United States. There is a Clean Cities Coalition in Hawaii. There's not one in Alaska yet. And we have directly or indirectly funded over 500,000 alternative fuel vehicles. We like to work locally. That's my job. I work from Canada down to Pennsylvania, west about halfway to Rochester. There's another coalition in Rochester. And then about 2/3 of the way towards Albany. There's a coalition in Albany as well. These are some of our projects. Down there on the left-hand side is a compressed natural gas station. On the right-hand side is a DC fast charge station. And you'll notice a lot of pictures that might have me or people you recognize in them because I try to take my own pictures so I don't have to acknowledge anybody else for them. At the top is a ride and drive we did last fall at a YMCA down in the Catskills where we borrowed a Tesla and we borrowed a Toyota Prius Prime over there on the right, which is a plug-in hybrid vehicle. So we are the people who try to connect everybody and get them to work together. what we do, we provide vehicle and infrastructure planning and funding. We get together as a group. It's kind of a strange group. We meet at the national lab. That is all 92 current Clean Cities coordinators in one place. They mandate it. And on behalf of Paul, I did go and grab a hydrogen station picture. You see it's a little fuzzy, but we're getting there. And I'll talk about this in a few minutes. It's a challenge using hydrogen as a transportation fuel. It works really, really well. But right now, currently, it's about $10 a gallon equivalent to make the hydrogen. So it's going to require incentives, but guess what? The oil and the gasoline people get lots and lots of incentives. If we got the same incentives as they did, we'd be much further ahead. We work closely with the federal DOT, so through the Volkswagen Center in Washington, D.C. And then we also work as a group. We have a Northeast region that has 21 Clean Cities coalitions in it. And we meet by phone monthly, and we meet annually once a year in the Northeast. And I already mentioned that we meet nationally once a year. These are relationships that we've tried to build over a number of years. We try to connect fleets. I take phone calls every day with people who are either building stations. I talked to someone at Mirabito Fuels the other day. Mirabito wants to put in some DC fast charge, so some high-speed electric vehicle chargers, and they're putting in a high-speed propane dispenser right now down in Binghamton, New York, for SUNY Binghamton. I work with local and national companies providing natural gas vehicles at the Ford platform. On your right is a charging station, a public access at the level 2 charging station. We've got about 180 of them in central New York now, and if you come back in a few weeks, you'll see one out in the parking lot here, and hopefully a few more than that. And we work with people to provide technical assistance. We try to identify funding opportunities for them because in virtually every case, the alternative fuel vehicle and the alternative fuel overall is probably going to cost you more than the traditional fuel. Low oil prices are not a friend to the Clean Cities program, and they're not a friend to clean transportation. Good news is I think it's up to over $60 a barrel now, so we're getting there. On the consumer side, we have a very active program in New York State. Through NYSERDA, there are direct incentives on electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles. So if you're considering buying a car or a truck for yourself, you might want to reach out to me. The incentives are up to $2,500. That is a Chevy Bolt on in the upper right-hand corner there. That is a battery electric vehicle of 230 miles, right, Chris? 230 miles on a charge. It's a very well-equipped car for around $30,000 before the incentives. There's a $2,500 direct payment to the dealership from the state of New York and a $7,500 federal tax credit. That is a Tesla Model X. That's actually in Interlaken, New York, at a friend's house. That goes 280 miles on a charge. It's not the most affordable vehicle in the world. It's about $100,000. But wow, it's an amazing piece of engineering and a lot of fun to drive. And then the picture on the left, that is the Toyota Mirai that you saw Paul in. That's a hydrogen fueling station. Toyota has deployed those vehicles now in Connecticut. They're filling them up in Hartford, as is Honda that has a fuel cell vehicle called a Clarity, also a very nice vehicle. We are going to try to entice, right, Ted? Toyota to come here and maybe work with us and work with Paul to start to deploy vehicles in New York State. Commercial offerings, a little bit different. Commercial vehicles tend to gravitate towards natural gas and propane. I work very closely with Ford. They have what's called a QBM program. So you can go to a Ford dealer and order an F-150 pickup truck. You can now order it to run on propane, run on natural gas, or run on electricity. Ford has companies called QBMs. I represent one called Westport. There are now EQVMs called XL hybrids and motive power. That's actually a picture from 2 weeks ago. XL hybrid makes an all-electric Ford pickup truck and also a plug-in Ford F-150 pickup truck that you can order through your Ford dealer. And exactly how it works is you would order it with an electric option. Ford would build the vehicle. It gets shipped to XL hybrids who are out in Boulder, Colorado, I think. They upfit the vehicle with the electric drive system on it. It gets reinserted in Ford's delivery system, so there's no additional charge to deliver it, and it shows up at the dealership. You take your tax credits, you take your rebates, and go out and drive. That other slide shows how propane and natural gas are stored on commercial vehicles. So that's about 20 gallons of natural gas storage, where typically the spare tire would go on a pickup truck, so it's behind the rear wheels. That's actually a drawing of the truck that's out in the driveway that I drive on a daily basis. There's larger commercial vehicles. Refuse industry is huge into natural gas. The school bus industry is huge into propane. And the good news for that is there have been ways developed now to make both natural gas and propane renewably. So it can be made from food waste, it can be made from animal waste. There's a lot of tax credits involved in this, and we're hoping that Washington keeps some of those renewable energy credits going, because I'll tell you, we have landfills here, we have a huge hotel industry here, we have Syracuse University that could be using their food waste. I happen to have met the guy out on Long Island who's tied up all the food waste and is making renewable natural gas that he's selling to the utilities. And some of you know, Rhea, you know, that National Grid here, the utilities in New York State, they have a mandate that a certain percentage of their power has to be produced renewably. So they've been working very hard and diligently putting in solar systems and putting in wind power. But by and large, the bulk of our electricity right now is made from natural gas fired generators, right? They're making high pressure steam, they're running turbines, they get low pressure steam out of the other side. In California now, 50% of the natural gas going to the natural gas utility generators is now renewable. So it can actually be a carbon negative because it's taking a waste product and turning it into fuel. I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see more natural renewable propane. But think of the refuse truck, okay? This thing has 120 gallons of fuel on it. It's right here. Waste Management down in Camden, New Jersey, they run their waste fleet on renewable natural gas that they make from the landfill where they dump all the trash. And that's really a perfect cycle, easy thing to do. And while at some point there's going to be commercially available electric versions of these, commercial vehicles focus on payload. So a commercial vehicle can only carry X number of pounds of product. And while you've seen a lot in the news, I'm going to show you a Tesla slide here as well. It's a challenge with commercial operators. So it'd be wonderful if they would drive electric vehicles, but they don't want to give up 30,000 pounds of their 80,000 pounds of payload to carry the batteries necessary to do that. So right now they're focused on renewable natural gas and renewable propane and biodiesel. However, coming very, very soon, this is a fuel cell electric Class 8 truck. It was jointly developed between Toyota and Kenworth. They run this truck on a daily basis in the port of Long Beach out in California. I'd love to have some more Toyota slides to be able to tell you the rest of that story. But that's impressive because a fuel cell operated vehicle does not, it doesn't take up the weight that a pure electric Class 8 vehicle will take. This is compressed hydrogen. It's stored on board at about 10,000 PSI. We were just talking about that. It takes a lot of energy to do that. There should be a better way. The better way might be storing it as a liquid and allowing it to gasify. This is Tesla's truck that you see a lot of. I put down that it's a little fuzzy. As you see, the picture's a little fuzzy. The math is a little fuzzy on it. There's a lot of PR on this. I've had the pleasure of meeting Elon Musk. I think he's a brilliant person. But this is going to require a lot of incentive money to do properly. The projected price on these, and they've sold a number of them. They've taken deposits on from UPS and Pepsi and people like that. They're probably going to sell for about $200,000, which is around a $100,000 premium on a diesel-powered truck. They're claiming that they can run it for 2 kilowatt hours a mile, and they're claiming they can run it for about half the fuel cost of a diesel-powered truck. However, that claim is based on 7 cents a kilowatt hour electricity. That's the rate they're using. That's what the power chargers in Indiana, where they're going to do one of their demos, and it's all coal-fired electricity. We did it at that rate, so that's a challenge. We pay 15 or 16 cents on average here, and in New York State, in upstate New York, we enjoy a pretty clean source of power because of Niagara Falls, because of the nuclear plants, because of solar and the wind. 500-mile range, that's the beauty of it. That's what people want. 500 miles is the equivalent of 8 to 10 hours of driving. A truck driver, after driving 10 hours, has to stop for 8 hours. However, you're probably going to see even larger versions of this because a lot of trucks, I was telling you, Paul, earlier, they do round trips, so they'll switch drivers. So a truck may go 500 miles and run to a location down south, and they'll simply switch drivers and run the vehicle back up here. So we're going to need even more storage. The Tesla product works on 4 separate electric motors, which is pretty cool. They're in the rear wheels. They're in 1, 2 on this side and 1, 2 on the other side. I'm told it can run on 3 of the 4 motors, which is pretty cool. I think service is going to be a big issue. I know, Ed and Tammy, you're aware that Tesla has been here, and Chris, you're aware that Tesla has been here and talked about having a consumer service center in conjunction with OCC. I think that would be awesome. If they ever bring the trucks here, I think that would be an expansion of that. It's pretty neat then. It's fun to see. I'd like to spend a few minutes on clean corridors. So the federal DOT, about 2 years ago, through the FAST Act, began to establish clean fuel corridors. The idea is that the fuel, the alternative fuel, whether it's electricity, biodiesel, propane, natural gas, or liquefied natural gas, they have certain rules as to how available it has to be among the corridor, because as they start doing this more commercially, people want to know that they can drive their truck from New York City out to Los Angeles. You can see that they're getting there. This is the electric vehicle map. This is combining the last 2 years' designations. So you see I-95 is pretty good, I-81 a little bit. We're kind of okay here. You see a little bit of stoppage. They require at least a level 2, and moving forward it's going to be DC fast charge every 70 miles. On the natural gas side, it's going to be every 200 miles. On the propane side, it's going to be every 120 miles, I believe, that you have to show that you have either existing or planned public access stations available. Here's the natural gas map. You see we have I-87 going from Albany down to New York designated, and I-90 going from, I think that's Cleveland, Ohio, out to Albany designated. Here's the LNG map. That's something that's used in the Class 8 commercial vehicle world. It's liquefied natural gas. You take gaseous natural gas and refrigerate it to about minus 270 degrees Fahrenheit. You can then, it becomes a liquid. You can store 13 times the energy content in the same space as a liquid. However, it has a shelf life, so it has to be planned when you make it. The closest LNG plant that I'm aware of that's here is in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's pretty cool thing to see. They use nitrogen to liquefy it. And it goes into Class 8 trucks, and then it's burned, it regasifies as it goes into the engine. But it's a very efficiently a third fuel. This is the propane map. So propane is starting to catch up. Propane is a fairly clean fuel. It's cleaner than gasoline. It's cleaner than diesel. And it used to be really, really cheap in the summer and really, really expensive in the winter. It's primarily used as a heating product. Since all of the natural gas development that's going on in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic area, a lot of propane comes up with that. So propane now has a very stable price, and a lot of school districts are converting or replacing their diesel-powered buses with propane buses. And here's the hydrogen corridor. We're a little small. We're getting started. It's actually a separate map here, Paul. I'll show you sometime. Hawaii has a couple of hydrogen stations now. Primarily, this has been a California thing because the state of California has had lots and lots of money to throw at this. But we are catching up. There is hydrogen infrastructure in Connecticut. There is a hydrogen station out at JFK. There used to be a hydrogen station in Rochester. We'd like to see that going again. So this is corridor ready and corridor pending. And consider that I-90 corridor, it's corridor pending. It is not ready yet. Okay, here's the most important stuff to pay attention to because this involves money. I like to call this, we have lemons. So this is the Volkswagen case. A few years ago, you're probably all aware of this. Volkswagen was charged with and convicted of falsifying testing on their 2 and 3 liter diesel engines. They actually had a vehicle that was called the cleanest production vehicle on earth, which was the diesel Volkswagen Jetta. Unfortunately, they falsified some information and they got fined. So the fine is $14.9 billion. A good portion of that fine was used to buy back Volkswagens, but the government thankfully recognized that even a Volkswagen that was emitting more than it's supposed to emit was a pretty efficient vehicle. So they have earmarked a number of the funds, quite a significant number, for class 4 through 8 vehicles. So think of something like an E450 airport or hospital shuttle all the way up to class 8 trucks. So beverage trucks, furniture delivery trucks, they will all qualify for the funding. And that total award is going to be $2.9 billion. That's going to go to larger, primarily commercial vehicles. This is called the Environmental Mitigation Trust. The amount your state gets is based on the number of Volkswagens that your state had registered. So California is getting the most, it's a little over $300 million. New York State is getting $127 million, plus they've already gotten 50 million. So New York and 13 other states teamed with California and sued separately. Unfortunately for us in the all fuels world, that 50 million has been swept into some general budget items, but the other 127 million has to be used for the deployment of clean transportation. That money is going to be routed through the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC. It is very heavily weighted towards public taxpayer-funded fleets, where it will pay up to 100% of the incremental cost. So think of your school district and you want to switch to a propane school bus from a diesel bus. It might cost $40,000 extra, or you wanted to switch to an electric school bus from a diesel school bus. Probably will cost $100,000 extra. It will pay up to 100% of that cost, which I think is a really powerful thing. The other thing that's powerful about it is you can't just dispose of your diesel vehicle. You have to make it unoperable. So you have to drill a hole in the engine block of the vehicle. And I've been very vocal about some of these startup companies that have a tendency in our industry to go out of business. I live in Baldwinsville. I don't want the Baldwinsville School District to drill holes in the sides of the engine blocks of their diesel buses and replace them with electric buses to find out that the electric bus company went out of business. So we are asking the state to make all companies that will be using this funding to bond their projects, just like you're bonding a construction project. And I know the legitimate companies in this business will not have an issue doing that. It will be built into the price. It's essentially an insurance policy. And this is important. Hydrogen-powered vehicles and electric vehicles will qualify. The funding outside of 15% does not pay for infrastructure. So on infrastructure projects, I think we're going to want to package them to include the vehicles as a package and try to get some of the funding in that way, or maybe go through what are called DARA grants. Anybody familiar with those? DARA grants, yeah, Diesel Emission Reduction Act, or grants for that. These are the specific vehicles that and projects that qualify for the Volkswagen environmental mitigation funds. Class 8 local freight trucks and port drayage trucks. Class 4 through 8 school buses, shuttle buses, transit buses, locomotives. If they're of a certain vintage, can be converted to run on electric, natural gas, propane, or hydrogen fuel cell. Local freight trucks, airport ground support equipment, that's a real good electric application. And then they're going to spend 15% of that $127 million on expanding the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So, out of our lemons, we're going to make lemonade. So what we want to do, I had to show Uncle Barry's bars. That could be my next career. I walked by there the other day. We want to collaborate with your group, the people here, and the people on the webinar, to try to put together some hydrogen and some alternative fuel projects. We want to collaborate with the other 5 New York State-based Clean Cities coalitions, and let's collaborate regionally on creating these clean corridors. Having a clean corridor should open us up to other potential funding, and then let's collaborate nationally. I mean, why not? Route 81 goes from Canada to Knoxville, I believe. Route 81 is a very heavily traveled truck route because of the fact that it doesn't charge tolls. So there's a lot of traffic on that, and there's a lot of emissions on it. And I just think that this is a very unique opportunity for Central New York. Here's the people we're going after first. Through the Clean Cities program, we already have a national partners program. So I've been reaching out to the local arms of all of these companies to say, hey, come work with us and we'll go after some of this funding. These are a couple other Clean Cities tools. This is some of the stuff that's available off of our website or off the federal website. And I'm almost done. These are some competitively funded projects we've gotten. We're working on one right now. It's going to finish up in September, called Fleets for the Future, to make alternative fuel vehicles available to public entities at a lower price. And then, Chris, you made it in there. That's Chris had a ribbon cutting in Fayetteville, where they put in a couple of level 2 EV charging stations. There's me at a natural gas vehicle road rally that went from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. Last fall. That was fun. And that's how you get a hold of me. So by all means, call me.
Back a slide.
Yep.
Why don't you take this moment to say there's going to be an event?
Yes, June 14th. NYSERDA is arranging with the Center of Excellence in Clean Cities a ride and drive event open to the public in our parking lot out here. There will be at least 2 and maybe a few more electric vehicle charging stations out there that you can try out. We will have a number of local car dealers here, so there will be Chevy Volts and Chevy Bolts and Teslas and plug-in Ford Focuses and new Nissan Leafs. Nissan has upgraded the Leaf that now goes 150 miles on a charge, which is a big, substantial increase. Smart makes electric cars. Mercedes is making electric cars. BMW is making electric cars that will be out here. So by all means, come here, and the fact that you signed up, you'll hopefully be on the list serve. So that's it, and I'm going to let Paul talk for a while here.
That's very exciting, Barry. Really timely too. I'm really happy that you put this together because I think we have a lot to talk about. Following on with Barry's comments, I'm just going to talk for a few more minutes to give you a couple of kind of corollaries to what we just heard from Barry about what our company is trying to do in terms of infrastructure. And I think I have to go get it from the desktop. Let's see if I can find out how to do that.
You're better at that than I am.
Well, I don't know yet. Let's see how it works. Okay, I'm lucky. I'm really a Mac guy. Okay, hopefully this is still coming through on the webinar. And I'm not going to share all of these slides. I need a presentation button. Okay. So hi again. So really briefly, as Barry kind of alluded to, the vehicles are out there, right? And they're coming. And the problem is that there's this chicken and egg problem we like to talk about, that you need stations, but how do you get a station without vehicles? How do you get vehicles without a station? All my partners now Forders because we hate that term. Chicken and egg is a horrible term, it's overused. The reality is you have to set up the infrastructure first, and the car companies will bring the vehicles where the infrastructure is. And so that's what we're doing. We're making an investable model that can be deployed today, even without large incentives, to get not just hydrogen, but also EV charging infrastructure up and running. I may have given the impression during my TED Talks that hydrogen is the only thing I think about. In principle, as a philosophy, that may be my personal philosophy, but as a company, we see that a rising tide is going to lift all of these, not boats, but vehicles, and that EV chargers and hydrogen refueling stations can go hand in hand. And if we do it right, that same facility that can charge both of those kinds of vehicles can also help the grid behind it have more renewable energy coming on the grid. So I'm going to skip over a lot of these introductory slides, but our motivation are folks like Ben. Ben is a high school senior. He's about to become a student ESF because he thinks about pollution and the world of the global vehicle, much more in his bones than I ever do. And even though I've talked about it in my talk a little bit, he's devoting his education to it, wanting to become an environmental policy student and practitioner eventually. He also loves the fact that the ESF has intercollegiate bass fishing team, which is really good. He's a good fisherman too. So, he's my nephew, so I know a little bit about him. Ben's not going to be our original customer. We're not going to sell directly from Standard Hydrogen to drivers like Ben. Instead, we're going to sell to people like Jan, dealerships, Toyota salespeople that have vehicles, because Toyota and Honda, by the way, and Kia, who all have fuel cell vehicles today in California, have baked the price of hydrogen into their cars. Let me say that again. You can lease one of these cars for $370 a month today, includes all your hydrogen for the first 3 years. So we're not selling directly to the driver, we're selling to auto dealers. That simplifies our business model a lot and allows us to take advantage of higher price points because the consumer doesn't really see that today. Second customer for us, the utility. Barry mentioned DC fast chargers. So DC fast chargers are around a little bit today. I think there are 50 kilowatt versions on a couple of thruway rest areas. NYPA has released plans to get to 150 kilowatt or higher chargers at all of the thruway rest areas in the next several years. I don't have the exact date. You have 4 people coming to plug in to 4 different 150 kilowatt chargers. That's 600 kilowatts that all of a sudden the grid has to deliver right away. And then, by the way, drop off, those people drive away, boom, it's gone right away. It's hard for the grid to do. People like Con Edison see that coming, and they want to figure out a better way to connect that to their grid. NYPA and NYSERDA, by the way, see the problem of having an economic model of a utility-grade charger sitting there without anybody using it most of the time. They want to get away from assets on the grid not being utilized all the time. So our solution is this on-site refueling and recharging station. It's a hydrogen station, much like the one I showed you on top of the Shell station with the canopy. Our electrolyzer is ground-based. That hydrogen will be a buffer to electricity needs for the grid, basically energy storage for the grid, taking intermittencies of renewables, smoothing them out, taking intermittencies of demand, like from EV chargers, and smoothing them out. While it's not serving functions for the grid, it can also serve functions for hydrogen refueling by just adding it to a dispenser and serving those needs on site. When it's not serving vehicle needs, as I mentioned a little bit, it also serves other grid-based needs, intermittencies of renewables, and other needs for on-site customers to decrease their own cost of electricity. I'm going to skip through a lot of these slides. I can come back to details if there are questions, but this kind of goes through how this is different than what's available out there today. But what we end up with, we believe, is a readily financeable model for infrastructure that can get deployed now. So I'll spend one more minute on what we mean about readily financeable. Here are some people that are interested in paying for the services that are coming out of our system. Once we deploy a system, we can immediately start generating revenues, either to the utilities themselves under item 2, under item 1, to behind-the-meter customers of the right size, and then, as we mentioned under item 3, to high-power vehicle recharging hubs. What does this mean in terms of cost? So NYSERDA today is looking at trying to reduce the so-called soft costs of energy storage. What does that mean? For a lithium-ion battery, the hardware costs, if you look at a system that's getting deployed on a residential scale, so a distributed scale, not up at the utility scale that they're doing in California, but down at the scale of, substations and neighborhoods. That can get up toward the number of $700 per kilowatt hour, even higher at that scale. The hardware costs, are only about half of that. About the other half, or 45%, are these so-called soft costs. Permitting, siting, sizing of the system, all these things that go into what you really need to do to deploy that really cheap lithium-ion battery into a system that it isn't getting used for every day yet. A new kind of system to design that, figure out how to interface with the grid, get it permitted, all that stuff. Hydrogen, we argue, is a more mature technology. These are fuel cells. Stationary fuel cells are already on the grid. They're the reason that anything stayed up after Sandy hit the Northeast. People were able to use their cell phones because cell phone towers are backed up mostly by fuel cells. Fuel cells on the global scale are down near 500 per kilowatt hour of installed capacity to the same kind of energy storage system that you would do. I did blow up the scale a little bit to show you that here our soft costs are just 8%. Now you could argue, well, that just means that your electrolyzer is way too expensive and your compression is way too expensive. And I'd say you're right, it is. Well, because these are made in the hundreds today, not the hundreds of thousands. Right? Batteries today are really made in the millions, and they've already reached their economies of scale. Look at how much gains we have when these start getting to the thousands or tens of thousands of units. Those economies of scale will drastically reduce that number down below 500, down to 200 or 100 for the whole system. This is a story we're trying to teach NYSERDA now, because when you have this kind of story, you get to these kind of numbers. Bottom line, big picture, we install a system today in 2018 with the revenues we generate in 2 years, we would be over break even for paying for that system's capital and operating costs. How do we get there? This blue line shows you the amount of hydrogen we're selling just to the vehicle market. It's actually our most substantially vetted number because we know how much we can charge for that hydrogen. We can model how many cars that takes to get there. The other numbers are exciting too. They talk about other revenues we can generate from the grid, but the policies in the grid are moving so fast that it's really hard to model those with any confidence. And so ignore those for a minute and just look at the blue line. How do we have confidence that the blue line is going to get there in 2 years? California today, at their 30-some-odd stations that they have around the California southern and northern parts of the state, each one of those 30 stations is averaging 41 fills per day. 4,000 cars or so on the road today in California. Each one of those stations fills 41 cars per day. They got there in about 18 months. That's when the vehicles from Honda, Toyota, and Kia were introduced in real numbers into dealerships, and these dollars amounts I told you about the cars started coming out. So 18 months, 41 fills per day. For them, those stations don't break even. They're operating on a different model than we are. I can talk about that if there's interest. They'll break even when they get to about 100 cars per day, which they expect to be about year 5 or so. Our systems are much more discrete, smaller, modular, made to be serving the market as it grows. And so our systems will reach break even, we model in a few years, assuming that the Northeast follows a similar trajectory. This is even a little bit more conservative than what California is following. So Barry, you and I should really talk. I think this story would be great for some of your partners that are interested in vehicles but don't know how to solve the infrastructure. We want to help them solve the infrastructure. We don't need massive incentives, we just need little ones. And we're ready to talk and be helping get this infrastructure out there. We have some partners of our own that we've been talking to and actually are supporting us in doing this. And what we're doing now is getting our first demonstration off the ground in the Albany area. Hopefully we're replicating that very quickly there. So thank you very much.
You show like in year 2 how you can create revenue,
Right.
right? What's the life of a hydrogen station? It's maintenance, and certainly there's maintenance to it, just like
Sure.
a propane or an EV charger or anything like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And those O&M, the operation and maintenance costs were included in that model, by the way. So the best numbers that the electrolyzer vendors and the fuel cell vendors can give us today is about 10 years.
Okay.
7 years, depending on how you really operate it, but some of the modeling done at National Renewable Energy Lab is that it doesn't really matter how much you operate it. Unlike battery, it doesn't change the lifetime. The lifetime really depends on the number of hours operating, and not how quickly or slowly you exercise it.
And so the electrolyzer that has to be replaced in 10 years is probably 20% of the cost of the one you put in now.
That's what we would expect. Yeah, and if you have to replace the whole thing, so that electrolyzer cost includes a lot of balance of system, or at least some balance of system. And it's unclear whether you need to replace the whole thing or just certain cells in that stack. I don't think we know that answer yet.
Do you know how many vehicles that station would be serving?
Yeah, so that station under that number was designed to serve 100 vehicles today. And the footprint that we would put it down, you could quickly add either more storage or more electrolysis to be able to start serving more.
So if it's 100 vehicles a day, how much hydrogen are you producing with that system? Because I know that like hydrogen vehicles typically run on like 5 kilograms of
Correct.
hydrogen.
Yeah.
So are you making like 100 kilograms?
Yeah, so it actually makes about 250 kilograms a day. So the 100 vehicles a day is estimating the usage patterns that they do in California today. And the 41 vehicles per day is also what they do in California today, which they each fill up half a tank or so when they visit, and they do that about twice a week. So each one, I mean, on average, is probably a bell curve, right? And some people are waiting until they get to the end of their tank to fill up. But on average, people are filling about half their tank. And so based on that 2.5 kilograms, that's how we get to 100 vehicles a day. It makes about 200 to 300 kilograms a day at station.
Just like EVs, people have range anxiety. So if they're near a hydrogen station or a natural gas station, they're going to stop and fill up and hop on.
There's no like come out to your vehicle with a can of petrol.
You should also know that the companies who build these vehicles, why they're such good partners, is that New York State is one of 14 states that agreed to have the emission standard that California has. And so there's incentives for the automakers to place the vehicles here. So the challenge is getting the infrastructure put in. So when infrastructure goes in, Toyota will start supplying Mirage to their local dealerships, and Honda will start to supply Clarities. What's Kia called their vehicle?
Kia's new one, is it called the Axo? Right? The original one was the Tucson.
Okay.
I think they just
Yeah.
renamed it for 2018 or 19. I think it might be called the Axo. I'm not positive.
Are there any European or other models that are using this? Or just
Lots of them.
like where?
And everywhere. See, in the United States, we are either blessed or cursed with very low fossil fuel prices. And so you can buy a gallon of gasoline for $2.30 and a gallon of diesel for $3. But if you go to Europe, it's $8 and $9. And the company that I represent, Westport, we do about 180% more business overseas than we do in the United States, simply because the economics of fuel prices. It's always been that way.
vehicles expected to come out next with fuel cells are Mercedes, GM, Nissan. I think that BMW and I forget one right after that, but there are almost 10, if not already 10, that are going to be releasing fuel cell vehicles, including the first 3 that already have them out in the next couple of years.
You know, Europe tolerates small cars too, we don't.
I think we have a question from the web.
We do, from Angela Linares. And her question is, or comment is, the presenter is distinguishing renewable gas from hydraulic fracturing gas. While landfill gas control is important, only some states classify fuel produced from landfill methane as renewable because there's an increased release of methane from practices at landfills when managed for gas production. And she cites the Sierra Club Landfill Gas to Energy Task Force FAQ.
I don't completely agree with anything, but I would certainly acknowledge that, and there are certainly ways to manufacture renewable natural gas and renewable propane and minimize those emissions. And so there's, for every set of standards or statements that are made about that, there's another standard from another group. And I try to look at the bigger picture. I actually work pretty closely with the Renewable Natural Gas Association and renewable propane people. That's actually a byproduct of making renewable diesel fuel.
So in that comment, what I heard was gas harvested from landfills. So that's one pathway that perhaps is accepted by some states that is renewable. But when you presented, what I heard was, behind it, I heard anaerobic digesters. So I heard,
We have
animal waste into a process producing gas. So, there's just recognize both the comment and recognizing the variety of pathways to get to a natural gas, an alternate source of natural gas other than coming out of the ground.
Right. And they're also recognizing that when you're making natural gas or recovering methane from a landfill, you're doing a lot of stirring up, but you're doing it in a short period of time, but that gas is coming out anyhow over a long period of time. It's going to rot and it's going to come out.
What do you say to people that say hydrogen is, the gas is compressed and it's dangerous?
The gasoline is dangerous too.
It's a lot more dangerous. I tell them that if somebody invented gasoline today and brought it to the government, they would never get approval for it. It's a known carcinogenic. It poisons water.
And the car companies have done testing, right? So to display people's fears about this, the car companies have done testing with their vehicles that no gasoline car would ever survive. There have been something like 3 million plus miles now logged on the roads of both California and New York and elsewhere. There have been accidents. There have been no fires, vehicles themselves. They've subjected the tanks to literally gun tests. They shoot bullets through the tanks and hydrogen vents, but there's no fires that happen. To get that kind of range, to get the 300 to 400 mile range, these cars get very high pressure tanks that are literally aerospace level technology with a lot of safety considerations already baked.
Yeah, the tanks are certified and tested to 2.25 times their operating pressure. So a hydrogen tank is probably certified to 22,500 psi. It's not inexpensive.
So now we have to ask, so what about liquefying hydrogen carrying?
That's
under pressure.
That's very promising technology, and allow it to gasify as you need it. And I think we were talking, I was aware 10 or 12 years ago, BMW had a pretty active liquid hydrogen program. They were running an internal combustion engine off of liquid hydrogen, though. It wasn't a fuel cell vehicle. Now they're switching over to fuel cell.
So folks weren't here at the beginning when I had a shout out to Cryonet.
Yes.
Which is a Syracuse area company that does cryogenic refrigeration and has technology for liquid helium management systems. Actually, liquid helium is more demanding than liquid hydrogen, so you could be doing liquid hydrogen like tomorrow, right?
This was involving a discussion now on the recovering of hydrogen during the transfer. Because a lot of hydrogen stations is liquid, storage in liquid.
Yeah.
They have to transfer liquid hydrogen from truck to the station. So they are thinking how to recover the hydrogen during the transfer, so they reduce the cost.
Yeah, it seems like a really good place to work. You're right, that most of the California stations follow exactly the gasoline model that we have today. So hydrogen is generated somewhere centrally. It's typically liquefied and then brought to the gas station by truck. And then that truck vaporizes the hydrogen or it is vaporized on site to be stored. Also, plug power was really, if you want to talk about safety of hydrogen, these guys are fueling, I don't know how many thousands of fills it is per day. It's less per fill in terms of kilograms. It's around a kilogram per fill instead of 5. But there are literally thousands of them per day that fuel forklifts at Amazon and Walmart and Raymond and these places. And most of their depots are run by liquid hydrogen. So that's another opportunity of development there.
A lot of that research took place in New York State. The big manufacturer of forklifts is Raymond down in Green, New York. And they've been working with a couple different companies on fuel cell powered, their electric forklifts that are hydrogen fuel cell powered. Very neat application.
And with the hydrogen, how quickly do you feel the
So ours would follow the same 2601 standard that all the stations in California do, which would be 3 plus or minus minutes to fill the vehicle. So that's one of the nice things about hydrogen, unlike EVs. Again, not to compare it like in terms of judgment, because we think that we want to serve EVs as well. But there is a problematic standard out there that the EVs are following 2 or 3 different standards now, right? No matter what hydrogen vehicle you have, they're doing all the same standards. So 2601.
Can you say more about the benefits to the grid that the hydrogen stations could provide? What kind of policy incentives do you think would sort of facilitate, utilities' interest? It's clear to see what their interest in EVs is.
Right.
Some are electrons.
Yeah.
But in terms of, actually monetizing the value of voltage regulation or whatever else,
Yeah.
what would be the maybe a couple of things that you would point to that would really kind of ramp this up?
Yeah, so here in New York State, we're in a really interesting time regarding energy storage for the grid. You might know about the REV initiative, the Reforming the Energy Vision, where the governor and NYSERDA and the PSC, the Public Service Commission, have tasked all of our utilities to really change their business model from just expected returns on investment on large equipment and wires that only get used part of the time, to moving into a model that ideally will follow the deregulation of the airline industry. So if you look back before airlines were deregulated, they had something like a 40 or so % fill rate on their planes, and it cost you something like $2,000 to fly from New York to California. Now they're somewhere closer to 70 or 80% fill rate on their planes, deregulated market, and it can cost you as little as $200 to fly from coast to coast. That's the kind of analogy that they like to use to talk about the grid, where now utilities become service points to be able to have people, companies, plug their facilities into the grid to serve needs of not just frequency regulation and voltage support, but to get rid of natural gas peaker plants, which sit around and operate maybe 10% of the time or less to serve the few days that people turn on air conditioners in New York City in August. If you have the right kind of energy storage deployed that can serve those needs, that's very easy for it to do. What's unclear in the battery market right now is that they don't know what else to do with that unit when it's not serving that need. So what our units can do is also serve hydrogen needs for transportation or EV needs, because our asset acts like a generator. It's got a fuel tank and a throttle. The grid knows how to operate that, and the versatility of that is much more amenable to multi-functions for the grid than what a battery could do. So it's a long way saying the REV initiative is really on its way to showing how to value these different mechanisms. I think that instead of incentives, they're trying to get the utilities to talk about how they can change their tariffs and their pricing mechanisms to customers to really be able to get the value baked into the rate plan. But the REV demonstration programs are moving ahead, and we're hoping to get one going in Albany to start showcasing how this can operate for the grid.
So just a quick follow-up then. Do you see it following the model of other kinds of DG where you have non-utility owned assets on the grid, providing support to the grid and getting compensated
Yes.
for those services?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then would we be more likely to see deployment of this technology in more congested parts of the grid, like downstate as opposed to upstate?
Yeah, I think that's
Limit the geography of deployment.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So under that model where this station is required to get incentives from the grid, then probably they will show up downstate where those needs are higher. But with this model about vehicles taking 2 years to deploy, I sort of said ignore the grid lines here for a minute. When we get traction with this, we're convinced that we will. We don't know which state will get traction first. We're hoping it'll be New York. That doesn't depend on the grid. The grid is just icing on the cake in that regard. And there are needs upstate for things like energy storage for non-wires alternatives, to get rid of substations, to get rid of substation upgrades where growth is happening. And we've had calls from NICEAG as far afield as Java, in a tiny little town outside of Buffalo. So it's not just the highly populated areas where things like that are needed.
They get to the point where there were pockets of industry 100 years ago that they served that they don't want to maintain it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, the things like that are happening. And these kind of solutions will help them avoid costs.
How much do you think you're going to be selling crypto?
Yeah, so eventually, the number today that is used is in California, if you're buying at a pump, if you're not in one of these arrangements with the dealers, it's about $16 per kilogram, 1/6. Vehicles get about 66 miles to the kilogram. So you can do the division on that, it's about 25 cents per mile for fuel. Where today, I think it's maybe 18 cents or so, $2 a gallon gasoline, something like that. We're hoping that after 3 years, and with low cost electricity from NIPA, we're sort of trying to negotiate right now with them. The biggest cost factor for us is the electricity cost. So we're hoping to be able to get down toward $10 per kilogram of hydrogen, which I have to do the math on that to figure out. I guess it would bring me down somewhere toward 38, 16 or 17 cents per mile, which is on the order of what we're doing. It might take us a couple of years to get there.
Last week I was, okay.
I was just thinking, so Toyota clearly has a hydrogen vehicle, and I think you said Nissan as well.
Today it's Toyota and Honda and Kia, and Hyundai Kia.
And so what does it look like in Japan for hydrogen vehicles? What are they doing there?
They're working hard, as far as I know, to get their infrastructure up and running. They're a little bit slower than they want it to be, but I still think a little bit faster than what we're doing here. They're working hard to get them up and running for 2020 Olympics, and not just cars, but also buses and especially taxis for visitors. Toyota has come out publicly, not as often lately, but they haven't walked back on their statement to say that they see their future in hydrogen. And it's important to remember they brought up the Prius. So it's interesting to think about that from their perspective. They're certainly not walking away from their electric models now, but they said they see their future in hydrogen.
They also released all their IP back in 15 or something like that. All their hydrogen technology.
I think a lot of the vehicle-based technology got released. Yeah, there are some key things in there I think that didn't, but a lot of it did. But there's been some really positive consolidation in the field. So Honda is working with General Motors on their vehicles. I think Toyota maybe teamed up with Nissan. I can't remember what the other alliances are. The Honda GM one is the one I'm most familiar with. But there are 2 or 3 other alliances out there where car companies are working together to get these technologies out into the market faster. It's really become this. The illuminating thing for me was about 2008, maybe 2009, working at Cornell, and we had hosted a couple of ride and drive events with Toyota present, with GM when they used to be right here outside of Rochester, where the Volt was developed and where their GM Equinox fuel cell was developed. They showed up on campus to bring their vehicles for ride and drive events similar to the one you're going to host here in June. grad students and professors and folks from around the town got in these vehicles and drove them around. It was fantastic. And it was part of a collaborative effort with them, where in the labs we're developing new catalysts and new membranes that go inside the fuel cell to decrease costs, increase efficiency and durability. And the GM guys turned around and said, hey, this is wonderful. We're going to need these materials that you're developing in the lab for our Gen 2 or Gen 3 vehicle. Our Gen 1 vehicle is ready to go to market now. All I need is the stations.
Your questions? I'm going to come to the mic so that folks on the webinar can hear us well. I hope they were able to hear the presenters through the webinar. Thank them and thank everyone here in the room. I have a shout out to Chris Carrick from the Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board and Rhea Jaser from Energy in the 21st Century Symposium, who joined us a little after we started. Rhea's annual conference on energy in the 21st century is April 20th. It's a great event, lots of terrific speakers, and happy to put a spotlight on that event and thank Rhea and Chris for attending and all of you. So outside we have refreshments, and invite you to join Barry and Paul and join me in thanking them for two great presentations.
Thank you. Those of you who have children, tell them to buy cars. That's what they use